Okay, this is DJ Hamoris for Dulcimoon Talks, and we have this morning Janet Herman of Santa Cruz, California. Welcome, Janet.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have a conversation with you. We haven't had any talks since Redwood Dulcimer Day stopped being in person.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so sad.
It's very sad. It's very sad, but it's really great to have you here today.
Thanks.
And are you in Santa Cruz proper?
Yeah, I'm right here in Santa Cruz right now in my home that I've lived in for over 20 years.
Uh-huh. With your piano behind you.
Yeah. It's stuffed. The whole place is stuffed with instruments. Yes.
Yes. So we are on Dulcimoon Talk number 48. We're just about to Dulcimoon Talk number 50. Yeah. And I'm so glad that we were able to work you in our first 50 talks. So Janet and I met at Redwood Dulcimer Day, which is an event that you co-founded and produced for many years. Mm-hmm. And I know you as a singer, a dulcimer player, a folklorist, a musical arranger, mm-hmm. and a person who's really involved in folk music in the Santa Cruz area and generally in California. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
Yeah. And you perform with your group, Zambra, a vocal group.
Yeah, that's a great group of, we've been together, we're celebrating our 30th anniversary this year. Actually, I haven't quite been in it that long, but yeah, that's been a really important small women's group that I've been in for a long time. Haven't played too much dulcimer in there. I do have a recording with them where I play the Cherry Treat Carol, the dulcimer.
Oh, yeah. I love that one. Yeah. And I've heard you guys often performing at the festival when we were at some churches instead of in the woods. We'll talk about that in a minute.
People from Zambra and perform with them at Redwood Dulcimer Day for sure. And they've helped me illustrate duos and trios in the workshops that I teach sometimes too.
Yeah, yeah. So take me on your dulcimer journey, Janet. When did you discover the dulcimer?
Yeah, okay, well, the dulcimer has been with me a long time, DJ. So I grew up in West Los Angeles in Southern California, and my parents were really into the arts and they loved folk music. In fact, they met at an international folk dancing class in the early 60s. And so when I was around 14, I think, they took me to the Summer Solstice Dulcimer Festival. I might have been the first one. It was at Greystone Mansion in Beverly Hills. And it was just, a very enchanting setting. This big stone building. It's a little fuzzy now, but I think there was this amazing building and there were gardens. And then they also had dulcimers that they were loaning out for the day. And I got to play the dulcimer and take workshops, probably from people like Neal Hellman and Peter Tomarup, and never dreaming that, 20 years later or whatever, they'd be important friends and collaborators here in Santa Cruz. But I got my first taste of dulcimer there. And of course, that festival expanded to be the Summer Solstice. I think it was called the Folk Music Dance Storytelling Festival. It was this huge festival, really important institution for folk music down in Southern California. It went on for like 30 years or something in different locations, but it started, I think, as a dulcimer festival at Greystone. And so I was there. And then I also saw the dulcimer at the Southern California Renaissance Fair. And of course, Neal Hellman and Michael Rugg ran that booth and sold the dulcimers that Michael Rugg and his brother Howard Rugg were making in the Santa Cruz Mountains in Felton here, the folk roots and Capritoris dulcimers. So I saw the dulcimer there, and I think people like Cynthia Smith were playing the dulcimer under the trees there. It was all part of that enthralling Renaissance Fair scene. And I took some of my babysitting money in high school and I bought my first dulcimer. And I also, I was just kind of fooling around with it on my own, but I also used to hang out at McCabe's Guitar Shop in Santa Monica, which is another folk music institution in Los Angeles. And I remember one time I went to a concert there and the French folk band Malicorn came through, and which was this incredible folk Renaissance-y sort of band. And the woman in the band, I think her name's Marie. I'm going to pronounce her last name wrong, but it was Marie Yakub, I guess. And she played a white electric dulcimer, which really blew my mind. And I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And so that had an impact on me also. And I actually played dulcimer in a rock band later in college. And that was kind of like trying to be Marie. You know, I was never as cool as Marie, but it, you know, had an impact on me. And then also after I graduated from high school, I worked at McCabe's for a summer. And I remember taking a few of Ruth Barrett's group classes and learned a lot of valuable things from Ruth. I was really enthralled with Ruth and Cynthia, not just their beautiful singing and their amazing finger picking, but also the album covers that they had with, you know, they look so gorgeous, and their vintage dresses and their garlands and flowers and that whole world they created on those LP covers. I just loved. I thought, oh, who are these people and what world do they come from and how can I go there? You know, so it's quite a contrast from the sort of Southern California beach valley girl. You know, if you think about the music in the 80s, it was pretty different from this kind of folk stuff, which I was kind of doing on my own as a teenager.
Very much.
But that was how I got into it. Yeah.
You know, so one of the things I want to clarify is we're talking about mountain dulcimers.
Mountain dulcimer, yeah.
I should have said that at first, not the hammer dulcimers.
Yeah.
And it's kind of amazing how much the dulcimer became part of the Renaissance Fair concept, because it's an American instrument.
Sure, it's not a Renaissance instrument. Yeah.
But nobody ever had a problem at the fair with those of us who were playing dulcimer, which included me and my husband and Barrett and Cynthia Smith and my friend Jenny Beilharz.
And was that at the Southern California Fair, DJ?
Southern California and Northern California.
Okay.
So between the two, we had dulcimer players all over the place. And it was Ruth and so Ruth and Cynthia both were connected with McCabe's at different times. Also Joellen Lapidus.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of Joellen at the time, but I know she became the dulcimer instructor there later.
Right.
And, yeah, and of course all this kind of connection to the fair and Joellen's history and everything is covered in Wayne and Patricia's film on that talks about the roots of the dulcimer and the California counterculture and all that, which is a really good film, Hearts of the Dulcimer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's a great film. And as I recall, another person that's been involved with the Redwood Dulcimer Day over the years, Laura Devine, learned from Joellen Lapidus.
Right.
Right. So it's just one of the things we've been finding in these talks is like these connections, the lineage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where did the instruments come from? Felton, California.
Right.
Where did we find them? Both in Southern California and in Northern California. Who were the teachers and the builders? And Joellen, of course, built dulcimers that Joni Mitchell played and with. And those West Coast connections are just as much of a lineage as when we talk about people in the on the East Coast and in the Appalachian region in North Carolina, West Virginia, Tennessee, and all of that. Yeah, it's pretty amazing once you start to make these connections.
Right. Well, and also I was really influenced by the Pacific Rim Dulcimer Project.
Right.
Which I had that LP when I was in high school also. And, you know, of course, Neal and Michael were also on that album.
Right.
And I was also really intrigued by Bonnie Carroll, who was the only woman on that album.
Right.
And, you know, and all those people I ended up meeting later through Redwood Dulcimer Day. But yeah, and I think all those people at one time, or most of them, lived in Santa Cruz too, that were on the Pacific Rim. Taught and played. At least they passed through for a little bit. That's my understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, Bonnie was Two Talks Back.
Yeah.
And
I love mine. Yeah.
If you haven't had a chance to watch that, give yourself a treat sometime.
Yeah.
She's in retirement, but boy, she's still very active.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And yeah, she was one of the early teachers at Redwood Dulcimer Day. We had her,
was she?
the early guest star. Yeah. Yeah.
And the other connection with Santa Cruz, for me personally, is my friend Lauren Lightbeam, who made my husband's first dulcimer. We still have it, and has since passed on. And we've had a chance to take one of her beautiful handmade instruments and pass it on to a friend who lives up in Sonoma County. And she's just delighted to have it. So the connections continue. I've always said the dulcimer world is very small, and if I don't know somebody, I will soon.
Yeah, it's very, especially, and the West Coast is even a subset of that. So everybody kind of ends up meeting everybody.
Yeah,
eventually.
So you met Neal and Peter Tomerup.
Yeah.
Through your connection with getting your instrument at the Southern California Fair?
Well, I mean, I didn't get to know them then. But then later, so Peter and I are both graduates of the Ph.D. program in folklore at UCLA.
Wow.
So Peter was actually there right before me. He left the year before I started, but I had my dulcimer with me, and I was playing in the old-time string band at UCLA for 3 years there. And every time I had my dulcimer, people say, "Oh, you play dulcimer? Do you know Peter Tomerup?" I didn't at that point, but then later I moved up to Santa Cruz, and he actually lives in Saratoga, which is only about a half an hour drive over the mountain from Santa Cruz. And, you know, eventually up here, everybody's saying, "Oh, I got to meet Peter, I got to meet Peter." And eventually we were at a music party, and we did meet, and it was wonderful because, you know, we instantly hit it off. How many people can you talk about folk scholarship and dulcimers with? You know, not that many. So, and we were very compatible musically, and we just had a really great time together playing music. And so I met him that way. And eventually he said, "You know, Southern California has a dulcimer day of workshops, but we don't have anything like that up here in Central and Northern California. Wouldn't it be great if we had something like that to every year to build community?" And I thought, yeah, actually, that would be great. And so at that point, it was around, well, the first Redwood Dulcimer Day was in 2001. And I had already been in Santa Cruz a little bit, and I had gotten involved in doing some music programming, like community programming. And so I had some connections, and I talked to this wonderful woman named Jill Coleman, who ran the Folk Arts Foundation of the Santa Cruz Mountains. She gave us some seed money to support it in the first few years. And also she was so amazing. She would come and she would cook lunch for everybody too, who attended.
Right.
And before she eventually relocated to Cape Breton, she was important in the early years. And then also I was involved with Community Music School of Santa Cruz, which is a nonprofit. I'd been doing a bunch of programs and concerts and all kinds of things with them. And I talked to Shelley Phillips, who's the executive director of Community Music School, about having a dulcimer day. She said, "Yeah, that sounds great. And you know what? I've been running this Celtic music camp for kids at this property up in Bonnie Doon, and I bet they'd love to have a dulcimer festival there too." So, and that turned out to be Sarah and Preston Boomer, and they had, we call their private estate property in the Redwoods up there, the Boomeria. And then we had, they were so generous, and they hosted Dulcimer Day there for about 12 years.
Right.
And I'll talk about that property in a minute, but, and then the other connection was, of course, Peter and Neal knew each other from the dulcimer world, but also Shelley and Neal have a very strong bond because Neal Hellman founded Gord Music, which is this incredible acoustic music label. He puts out his own albums on that, but he also puts out acoustic instrumental, wonderful albums from a lot of sort of this other stable of artists that he has. And Shelley is one of those artists. So that was an extra connection. And he very early on became a big supporter of Dulcimer Day. He eventually took over the directorship of Dulcimer Day, right, 2017, but in the early years, he was more of a, just an advisor, a booster, and also he would, very important role, he knew all the people and he would be the host. So he would pick up the guest artists from the airport and take them back to his house and wine and dine them all weekend and give the children a great time. And so the artists loved coming to our festival. Between Neal's incredible hospitality, the beach, the redwoods, and this property, and all the enthusiastic California students who love to do just about anything, you would throw at them. The artists really had a good time here. Yeah. So, so the property Boomeria was this very unique setting. And Boomer had been a high school science teacher for over 50 years at this high school in the mountains there. And over the years, he had brought his students to the property to construct features on the property. So you have this beautiful redwood setting, and then you'd enter the gate and you'd see this pool, this nice pool with water cannons. And then it was kind of like a Renaissance theme. And then you'd go a little farther and there'd be this beautiful wood chapel with this 40 rank pipe organ they'd built on site that Mr. Boomer would always demonstrate, at lunch at Redwood Dulcimer Day. And you could go inside and sit under the pipes and, while it was playing. And then he had this 3-story castle with trap doors and ladders and secret rooms. And if you went down into the dungeon, you could even enter this labyrinth of catacombs under the whole property. And then we also had a very large clearing where we could have big jam sessions when the day was over, which was really nice. And Boomer and his wife would sit there on the swing and listen, and that was great. And then he also had long tables and a kitchen we could use. So it was a very unique setting for the Dulcimer, and it really helped launch it because everybody was so enchanted by this property and this experience that you couldn't really get anywhere else, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
And it kept the cost down too.
Oh yeah, because we did trades for the venue, so we didn't have to do a rental. And that's become a problem in recent years for event production. The rates of venues just keep going up and up and up. Even churches, it's hard to find an affordable church to rent. But we had that property, and we could just put all the money into paying the artists, really, if we had any left over. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember those fondly. One year Robert Force came out.
Yes, he did.
And there was a period when, I don't know, maybe it was lunch or something, and he had been teaching the Wabash Cannonball. And I was like, how the heck do you play that standing? And he and I were literally just wandering in the woods, and he was showing me how to do it. I was like,
Great.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
But, he can play and walk. He's standing up playing and he's walking. And I'm like, okay,
yeah, over the uneven.
Show me how to do this.
Train there, yeah.
And you're in the redwoods, and the duff is thick. The duff is all the fallen leaves and needles, right? So you never know what it's gonna be like.
Yeah.
And you hope it hasn't rained recently, because you're going to slide down.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely an adventure going there. And eventually for various reasons, we had to relocate to churches because, it was just getting a little bit dangerous for some of our Dulcimer population that was getting a little bit older, especially. But it was great while it lasted.
It sure was. Everything but the mosquito bites.
Yeah. Yeah. And we used to have the Dulcimer girls used to lead the jam. Jamie Kelly, who's unfortunately passed away a few years ago. Her and Laura used to lead the jams. And we had this whole crew of volunteer students from mostly from Peter's classes that came and helped out. It was a real community effort. So many people, I don't want to name them because there's too many, but lots of wonderful volunteers. It was a really good community.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, it was a wonderful event, and I'm really glad that Peter talked to you, because boy, you guys really were able to keep that going. You helped produce that for what, like 10 years?
Yeah, I was the director. I pretty much did, everything for about 10 years, from registration to, everything. The loaner table, coordinating everything. And it took a lot of time, but it was so rewarding.
Yeah.
And yeah, then about 10 years into it, I realized, I have little kids. I've started a nonprofit. I need to do some other things. But Ron Beardsley took over it for a while. And then Shelley went back to Shelley Phillips, the executive director. And then I helped her with that for a few years. And then Neal's been doing it ever since. It's still going strong. Susan Willits, who's the current executive director of Community Music Schools, doing a fabulous job keeping it going with Neal. And she does all the tech end of Zoom. It's interesting how it's gone onto Zoom, and there's pros and cons, of course, but the big pro is now that we're reaching people all over the world.
Yep.
And that's very exciting, Yeah.
I really feel like the pandemic did the dulcimer world a favor. Because everybody who is used to going to festivals missed them so much. And the folks who started to do the Quarantunes Festival, they were, the Berkeley Dulcimer Gathering, we went online right away. And it was great to be able to do that. The quarantine has continued, of course. That starts again the first weekend in October.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, they've got like 75 teachers. I mean, from all over the world, literally.
That's so great. Yeah.
But the cool thing is, after about into the second year when quarantine was happening, they did a survey, and fully 80% of the people who answered the survey said they'd never been to an in-person festival.
Really? Wow.
And that's what made me decide to put Dulcimoon together. I knew I didn't want to keep doing Berkeley Dulcimer Gathering. So I figured, well, if there's like 2,000 people who were responding to, most of these online festivals for quarantine, I think there's room for a smaller one that's just woman-led.
Mm-hmm.
And it also, when you talk about serving people, you're able to see the folks who could never travel, the people who can't, afford it, but they can do like one day or whatever.
Right.
And online events, if they're successful enough that they pay for themselves, you can be very generous with scholarships.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, there's a lot of pros. I mean, I do miss the in-person. This year we did have a party afterwards. In person. That was great for anybody who was local. So it was nice to have that come back a little bit.
Yeah. I'm sorry I wasn't able to participate in that.
Next time.
I should have driven over the hill.
Yeah. So DJ, I know, like you were just telling me before it started that Redwood Dulcimer Day was your first in-person festival, Dulcimer Festival?
Yes.
Yeah. And then did that inspire you to start the Berkeley Dulcimer Gathering?
Yeah, eventually 2013 was the first Berkeley Dulcimer Gathering.
Mm-hmm.
And it did inspire me because I felt like in the urban area here near, in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is literally the counties that touch the Bay, there wasn't anything. There was the San Francisco Folk Music Club, which was its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Dulcimers were welcome, but they didn't always know what to do with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided, well, we should try to do something up here too. And I remember one year really connecting with both the Redwood Dulcimer Day and the Southern California Dulcimer Harvest Festival,
Mm-hmm.
and like even doing ads together so that people could see there was something. And the Dulcimer Harvest was in the fall. I was doing mine in the spring, and Redwood Dulcimer Day was always in the summer. So I thought that was a pretty good
Dulcimer year. Yeah. Yes.
And many of the same people would attend all three, like Ron Beardsley and Catherine Lamar and folks like that who who were able to travel and were collecting beautiful dulcimers and able to really enjoy that. And I could sit there and see all the dulcimers they had because I had my folk roots that I got in '79 at the Southern California Fair. That was my only dulcimer until 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things I remember about your classes is you almost always included Jean Ritchie as part of what you were teaching, and that the singing was part of it as well. So talk to me about your collection of tunes that you've decided to learn, to arrange.
Right. So I've done a bunch of things over the years, but lately I've kind of gravitated towards at least teaching songs of different genres. I think it's brings up a lot of interesting issues when you start looking at a song and in a particular style, and what is the chord voicing you're going to use, and what's the strum pattern, and what's, it's really looking at that song and trying to bring out the emotion of that song. I've been inspired by, I've listened to a lot of Irish music, and I play a lot of Irish music on other instruments, and a lot of vocalists like Kathy Jordan of Dervish and Susan McEwen. And I mean, there's tons of great singers, and I love to listen to them, to be inspired by how they sing, but also listen to the backup, and like the Irish trad backup is really interesting, and using that dad-gad guitar tuning, D-A-D-G-A-D, it's an open tuning. And then, like, for instance, like trying to get that sound on the dulcimer, which is in D-A-D, it's kind of an interesting puzzle to solve, and because you can get a lot of the same kinds of emotion out of it that you can out of a dad-gad guitar. So that's interesting. And there's this one Irish singer also named Eilish Kennedy. She lives in Dingle, and she's been out to Santa Cruz a few times. Beautiful singer. And she has a dulcimer hanging from her pub in Dingle. You can go there and play it. So that's one of the things. And also, as a folklorist, I just really enjoy kind of taking a little mini deep dive into different styles, like I did when I was in grad school. But so in the summer is kind of my dulcimer season, and I allow myself to like get into these topics a little bit. Like, I've had a lot of fun doing looking at old time brother duets and trying to transfer that, the duet lines to dulcimers, and also while singing and adapting that from women's voices. And lately I've had a lot of fun doing like early women of country music, just going down into the rabbit hole on YouTube and watching Katie Wells or whoever it is, and then bringing that up. So I have a lot of fun just going into different song styles, and then talking about the issues of those different styles in the class a little bit too, so that it's not just a tab class, or it's not just a verses with chords class, but it's talking about the song a little bit, in the style. Right. Yeah. Not too much talk. You don't want to bore people with too much talk, but just a little bit, Yeah.
Yeah. Let's get to the tune, right?
Right. Yeah.
So folklore.
Yeah.
That's I find that it's very interesting. You, Peter Tomerup, and Holly Tannen.
Oh, right. Yeah, it's Holly. Yeah. She's great. I had one of her cassettes early too, before I was ever a folklorist, and I was always fascinated by her stuff also. Then later I did meet her in the folklore world. But I wrote my academic work on sacred harp singing, which a lot of people in the folk world already know what that is, but it's a really powerful 4-part harmony singing, a cappella harmony singing that's been going on in an unbroken line in the South since, the 19th century. And then it was taken up in the folk revival by a lot of other groups, including a lot of people in California, which is what I focused on. But, and I know there are several people in the dulcimer world that adapt sacred harp tunes to dulcimer. because they just lend themselves so well. They have that folk, they come from the same sort of folk background, the tunes. And so I sometimes like to adapt some of the more gentle Sacred Harp tunes with the beautiful old sort of folk or folk-like melodies. Go great with dulcimer.
Yeah, they do. Steve Yulberg has a collection of them. And Mandy Tyner has been really focusing on them. She's known mostly on YouTube as Banjo Lemonade. And if you haven't checked out Mandy's YouTube videos,
I need to do that.
Yeah, she's definitely working on the shape notes, and she's going to be teaching at the next Dulcimoon. And we're probably going to have her do some of her shape note tunes that she's brought to Mountain Dulcimer, because we haven't had that yet.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's such a big repertoire too, so there's a lot of material.
Exactly, and the harmonies are beautiful, but often they're also dissonant in places that we don't expect. When you've got all three going at the same time, and you have to just kind of say, yes, this is correct.
Yes, there's some sort of archaic harmonies, some grinding going on in some of the songs.
They're wonderful.
Folk harmonies. Yeah, it makes the repertoire really sparkle.
One of the things I love, I went to a day-long sing in San Francisco some time ago, and what I came away with was there's one main aesthetic, and that's loud.
Yes, for sure. A big one-day singings, which we're having one in Santa Cruz, by the way, or up north at Pie Ranch on October 6th. So,
okay.
If there's anybody out there,
okay. Locals take note.
Locals take note. Yeah, at a farm, it'll be beautiful. Yeah.
So you mentioned the Hearts of the Dulcimer podcast. How did that connection with the Redwood Dulcimer Day and it's Wayne Jiang, Patricia Delich?
Yeah, I'm not sure how she pronounces her name. It's Delich or Delich, but yeah, I love that story because I don't think Wayne and Patricia met at Dulcimer Day. They told me they met somewhere else, but I think they really deepened their acquaintance at Dulcimer Day. And I think it's kind of a Dulcimer Day romance. They really got to know each other through, probably through Dulcimer days, and then they became not just the real power couple. They were not just married, but also creating these incredible contributions to the dulcimer world through their film and then their podcast, which there's many episodes of that, which I think are still available. Yeah. So
Wayne is an amazing artist.
Oh, so beautiful. And he used to do the poster for Dulcimer Day. Michael Redd did it the first couple of years, and then Wayne volunteered to do it. And he also did you can see his beautiful, it's a little glare, but his etching for the Dulcimer, that was an album we did in 2010 of all the Dulcimer teachers that had taught at Dulcimer Day up to that point. CD we did, but yeah.
And his art actually has been on the cover of the Dulcimer Players News more than once.
Yeah, he's one of a kind. Great. Yeah.
So all of this to me is it's a testament to the creativity of the community.
So much creativity here in California. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, also in
the West Coast, the whole West Coast. Well, beyond that, but
yes,
I speak to the people that I know about the most. Yes.
Yeah. And I really have appreciated being introduced to different kinds of music through, I remember when I went to Peter's classes, he's so prolific with his arranging, and he always had some great easy tunes that were like French country tunes or
Yeah,
Breton.
Peter's so good at that. Yeah, he
He's
loves
so
that
good.
Those European tunes, especially the French country dance tunes, and of course he does a lot of Irish too. But that French music is great because it's not as notey as Irish music.
Right.
Yeah,
And it's very accessible.
very accessible, but sounds so good. Yeah.
Fun. Yeah,
Yeah,
I still
fun.
have some of those arrangements here.
Yeah,
Yeah, really good.
And of course, Neal does a lot of Irish and other kinds of, European early music, all kinds of stuff too.
Yeah, he does a lot of the early music is big with him. I know he sent me a lot of Lauda. He has
right.
a great collection of Lauda.
Yeah.
And it's surprising to me how much the early music is popular with my students.
Yeah. Again, accessible, gorgeous, wonderful stuff.
So both very prolific, both very generous musicians.
Yeah, very wonderful people, both of them. I've been so supported by all these wonderful friends, It's been a great time with all of them.
Right. Yeah. And you've done all this and raised a family.
Yeah. I mean, we are a musical family. We play music together. We do a lot of Irish music together. And my older son's 19. He grew up at Dulcimer Day. And he now comes and, often plays duets with me for my classes or for the faculty showcase concert. He's a great fiddler, mandolinist, guitar. He sings. And my other son is also coming up in fiddle and mandolin and saxophone. And, it's really fun. We just do music together. And of course, the dulcimer is a great instrument to do with your family. My mom and I also played dulcimer together for years. She used to come to every Dulcimer Day, and she still has her dulcimers in her 80s. So good. Play it with her. Yeah.
I want to make sure to talk about a couple of things. We were talking about West Coast style of dulcimer and how that's come up a lot for me as I'm doing these online festivals, and I was like, I didn't know it was a style, but you knew it was a style. Tell me what you think of when you talk about
that. Okay, Peter likes to talk about this topic a lot, but I wouldn't say I can really speak with a super amount of authority on it, but I know that people like Michael Rugg, he was building dulcimers with that 6.5 fret. He was really developing a chording style, maybe before other people were, I'm not really sure, but it sounds like maybe he was. And at least, that was really a California thing, definitely, to play with the chords and not just, with a noter. And I'm sure people were doing it elsewhere, but it was really developed here. And then you have, people like John Lapis coming in with these jazzy chords. You have people like Robert Forrest coming with that rock and roll sensibility. And I think there's just a lot of energy and a willing to experiment here. So I don't know if there is like a one sound on the West Coast, but I think we are out here. We are really, willing to experiment, and we're not really thinking about the tradition because we're not too close to it. So we're just out here kind of doing whatever strikes our fancy, So I think maybe, I don't know if there's a West Coast style or sound, but it seems like there's a West Coast sensibility,
Well, I think about Força do Che, the recordings, and the tune that they're most known for, which is Wellen. And the duets that they would do, and they're very dulcimeric. If you've ever played them, it just moves up and down the fretboard, and it's mostly chordal. Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, but you do have a lot of, like we were talking about earlier, you also have with Cynthia Smith doing this very lovely, tranquil finger picking style. So it's a big tent over here for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
And there's some beautiful players of that style, Linda Brockington
Oh my gosh.
and
I love her. Yeah, she came out. Yeah.
Nina Zanetti, who
Yeah.
was a Clinton student, and
Mm-hmm.
just pretty amazing. Susan Trump and Sue Carpenter from
Mm-hmm.
Texas. She
Mm-hmm.
has some beautiful finger-picked stuff that she plays and puts in books and stuff like that. So yeah, that finger-picking style is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make
That's
sure
amazing how there is a lot of variety on the dulcimer. It's considering its limitations, you can really get a lot of diversity and a lot of music out of that thing.
one of the things I tell my students is I've been playing for 45 years and I have yet to exhaust the possibilities.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So there you go. And I have a chromatic. She gets played the least, but I'm always looking at her.
Yeah, I've never experimented with that. I've always stuck to my original, but even that I haven't exhausted the possibility.
Yeah. So you've got your vocal group Zambra has a project that you were telling me about.
Oh yeah, it's fun. You were talking about how I have incorporated some Jean Ritchie songs in my teaching, and yeah, one year we did a whole Jean Ritchie project where I kind of got a little band together and we did a whole suite of Jean Ritchie songs for the concert, and that was probably one of my best memories from Dulcimer Day with Kathleen Levis, Laura Reeves, Shelley Phillips, and Steve played with us one time too, I think. But the larger group of women of Zambra, which is usually 9 or 10 women, we've recorded Jean Ritchie's song "Now Is the Cool" as an a cappella song with beautiful.
Oh, I love that.
It's such a beautiful and timely song.
Yeah.
And so we recorded that, and we just did a music video actually this past weekend of it. So we'll be releasing that. It might not be released till the spring, kind of as an Earth Day maybe thing, but I'll send you the link when it comes out. But yeah, and it'll be available on YouTube if you just do Zambra "Now Is the Cool." I'm sure it'll come up in a search.
So, and Zambra is spelled just like it sounds?
Yeah, Zambra. We have an album of Jewish music. We have an album of sort of Northern European / American music that came out a couple years ago. And we just sing in a lot of different languages, and it's a beautiful thing.
Well, I would expect that it's zambra.org, right?
Zambra.org, yeah.
Yeah, that would be the video would be announced there too.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
So for our
and we're on Bandcamp. You can go there and listen to some of the samples too.
Oh yeah, do that, folks. This beautiful music. You guys have a great way of choosing not just your material, but how to arrange it.
Yeah, thank you. We do have a couple of women in the group that are arrangers, so it's great to have in-house talent to write and arrange for the voices in the group.
Right.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to catch up with you, honestly.
Yeah. So great. And we get together in person sometime. That'd be great.
Yeah. And we will be I want everybody here to know that this video is available on a replay at the same link that you've been watching it here. So if you see it today or if you catch it later, please share it with your friends, with your folklore music friends, with your Northern California music friends, and people across the country. At this point, we actually have a fundraiser going on. I'm going to make sure that Erin May puts the fundraiser link in the chat for you. And those funds are going almost exclusively to these Dulcimoon talks. And you and your club or your business can sponsor a talk, which would be great. So we're just starting that program up. And thank you so much again for your time and your flexibility.
Yeah. And thank you for all the work that you and Erin do for the Dulcimer community. And I think these talks with women is just a fabulous idea. And thank you so much.
You're so welcome. All right. Thanks
All
so
right.
much,
Yeah.
Janet. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was good.
Yeah, are we
We're done.
no longer